My name is John, and I am a nobody. When I was still living in Amsterdam and had mastered the technique of riding a bicycle with no hands while rolling a cigarette and not knocking into anybody, I used to go to a nice bar on a Sunday. It was a beautiful sunlit bar with massive windows, and I used to enjoy going down there because they had really good Guinness. And not only that, they had people who would play chess. And I met this guy down there who was very good, and he looked normal, whatever that is. He was also English, and he was very good at playing, and he enjoyed playing. So we had a game. I don't remember who won, probably him. And then we had another game, and he started chatting a bit about himself. He was an interesting guy. So he admitted that when he'd been younger, he'd been a skinhead. And this is not good. There were two types of skinheads in those days. There were right-wing skinheads and left-wing skinheads. But unfortunately, he'd been a right-wing skinhead, and over the weekend, he'd go out with his friends and try to find somebody on the street to beat up, normally a person of Pakistani origin, though that's not the word he used. I looked at him and said, well, what on earth happened to you? What changed? And he looked down at the game that we were playing of chess, and he said, this changed me. That game of chess had changed his entire life. He'd learned how to play chess, and he'd become a completely different person. I've never forgotten that. And years later, I was playing bass with a combo in the east of Berlin, in a little village that used to have a festival every year. And they asked me if I would also do an art project because I was heavily into art. So I got them to get me an overhead projector, and I prepared very well for it. And I had these plastic sheets which had been painted on and written on, but everything's round the wrong way. It's round the other way, it's upside down, it's a bit confusing, especially if you are like me and have a pea-sized brain. So I got everything set up, and I was about to start, and there were some people sitting down, on benches. And these skinheads came in, and everybody was like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And one of them sat down right next to me. And he asked me what I was doing, and I told him, and I started my little show. He stayed for the duration of what I was doing. And then at the end, he was asking me all these very pertinent questions. And I thought, wow, this is something else. Because he was communicating with me, and I was communicating with him. And he was learning something, I was learning something. The big thing I learned was never judge a book by its cover. And this man who was actually, if you looked at him, you'd want to run a mile. He was actually very interesting. And perhaps, that little moment was his chess moment. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it was. It changed his life, maybe. I hope so. Now, playing chess is great. My dad taught me how to fork and pin and do all these things. And it's a great game because every game is different. It's like a really good concert. It's not always exactly the same. So my advice, if I have any, or if I'm allowed to offer it, is, learn chess, because you will never forget the wonder of chess and the power of chess. it's like riding a bike back in Amsterdam, you know, with no hands, just riding along, enjoying yourself, rolling a cigarette or not, as the case may be, and making sure you don't bump into anybody. So I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one. And until then, well, take care of yourself and those you love. And as always, Tchaikovsky. Bye.